Hello and welcome to the Base Creates podcast. Today we are talking to Howard Barker, playwright, poet, painter, director, designer and essayist. He is, in many people's opinion, our greatest living playwright. His work is extremely difficult to categorise. He has coined the term Theatre of Catastrophe and has argued for the reintroduction of the tragic mode. His style is unique, poetic, tragic, speculative, full of wild imagination, contradictions, anachronisms, dangerous ideas, ruptures in character, time and space, and in all of this, the position and the opinion of the playwright, what we are supposed to think, is totally uncertain. Thank you very much for joining us, Howard.
Thank you.
I just wanted to start off, perhaps you could talk about your earliest experiences of writing, and particularly of writing theatre.
I think I started writing as a child. In fact, I'm sure I did, of course. Most writers do. But for some reason, I wrote a theatre piece, well, let's call it a play, as a 9-year-old. That's the earliest I can trace it back.
Wow.
Short play. But our family were not involved in the arts. It had nothing to do with the arts. My father was a factory worker, so was my mother, so it wasn't the milieu you would naturally expect to know about the theatre. And I've been thinking about it recently, as one does think about one's childhood as you get much older. And although there was no theatre that we visited, my parents in a way provided me with a theatre in the sense that the house itself was really bizarre, noisy, angry, contradictory, passionate, and actually violent. So what went on in those little walls actually was as much theatre as I was later able to reinvent for myself.
And this was in Norwood?
In South London, yeah.
Yeah.
We lived in council housing. My father was, well, he had been a bookbinder, but later bookbinding became machine. So he became a machine minder.
And did you have siblings?
I had a brother who's dead now, yes.
Do you remember, were you a big reader?
I must have been, because I've read an awful lot of classics by the time I was a teenager. So I must have been.
Wow.
Though the house was not full of books. I don't know where I got them.
Libraries?
Yeah, there was a library locally and I used it.
Good. What was the school like? Was it a grammar school?
I went to a London grammar school.
Yeah.
Pretty violent.
Really?
The teachers were all ex-army men. And I don't criticise them, they had a hard life.
Yeah.
And a lot of us were trouble. But, I wouldn't call it a very civil atmosphere.
Were you violent?
No, I have an abiding hatred of it. In the act, if you know what I mean. I don't say I haven't got a violent imagination, I have. I understand cruelty. I know what makes people violent. But in myself, I have a deep repulsion for it. Now, that's really conventional, I know. No. But it just happens to be an instinct. I was only talking to someone the other day about where the Russian Revolution went wrong. And I had to say, I thought killing the Romanovs was a disaster.
Right.
Not because it had a huge political effect, but because if you introduce a new world and you start off by killing 5 children, you've already set yourself a problem of contradiction anyway.
So you're drawn to this idea of contradiction. It comes up a lot. I think, didn't you find a quotation that said the origin of all of your work is contradiction?
I would support that, yes. Yeah. I think that's true.
But what is that? What is contradiction? Is it that you see that is the truth of the world?
Yes, I would say it was the truth of the world.
Yeah.
Just as inconsistency is the first law of reality. Certainly the first law of human beings as reality. And no one ever tells you that at university, of course. I think contradictions is inevitable in almost every statement one makes. That at some point you're going to act in reverse to what you stated. And that may be because one's passions overcome one's logics.
When you say you understand cruelty, I think it's clear from your plays that are often extremely violent, extremely cruel. What is it that you understand about cruelty?
Why it gives you a certain pleasure to see your enemies suffer. I understand that. Don't know more than that for a minute.
What is that pleasure of seeing one's enemies suffer?
Well, I understand revenge. I think everybody understands revenge, but most people don't want to admit they do. It's an instinct. Well, I'm going to use the word instinct a lot because it kind of governs what I've written and what I think. I maybe have a lot of instinct. Certainly my mother did. She was a thoroughly instinctive woman. Impossible to live with. Really difficult to live with. Because she could not sustain a sort of civility in the house. The instinct would overcome her. And that happens a lot in my work. Someone might be saying, well, we think this logically, we think that logically. And then a moment later, that character will perform an act which overthrows what they've just stated.
Yeah. And there's a certain kind of tradition of writing and even acting and playwriting that would say that that's not dramaturgically correct, right? The characters have to be a bit more consistent than that.
Well, that takes me back to what I just said, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think consistency is the enemy of the theatre. And if actors can't deal with inconsistency, they shouldn't be really on the stage.
Yeah, no, I agree. So just to go back, so then what was, when you, like, why did you start going into the theatre? If your family's not particularly into it, you weren't going that much.
Didn't go at all. When I was at university, I thought I'd like to become a writer in a way. I'd only dreamed of it as a child. I thought, I will make an effort. But I wrote novels. I did not write plays. They were long, probably useless. I haven't got them anymore. I couldn't really state that, certainly. But I remember a friend who was also a writer, or would-be writer. He said, the really good thing in this stuff is the dialogue. And I think you should write to the BBC and say you'd like to write a play, or you have a play to show them. I was about 19 then.
Wow.
I did that. And I have to say, whatever I would like to say about the BBC later on, it was full of, I would say, good people in the drama department. They were interested in drama. So if someone like me threw a script at them like that, they would almost certainly call you in. And they'd say, we're interested in you, and they'd develop you to some extent. I don't think that happens anymore. In fact, I'm sure it doesn't.
No. But that would have been the era you would have had people like Harold Pinter, Dennis Potter, is that kind of time?
Perhaps earlier, right? I'm not sure. I can't remember names, I'm afraid. But who wrote Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead? Stoppard.
Yeah.
That was kind of his era in the radio department. And more or less that's the time I turned up as a very young writer. And I did my first play of all for them, and they did it. It was a half-hour piece.
Do you remember what it was called?
Yes. It was called One Afternoon on the North Face of the Pyramid of Cheops the Great.
Oh, I think I've heard of this. What was it? Was it about people who
going on strike?
They went on the builders of the pyramids went on strike.
The slaves organising a strike. Wow. And it was rather funny. I haven't read it, of course, ever now, but I believe it was funny, and they approved it.
So it was set in the time of them building the pyramids,
yes,
and the
exactly.
workers go on strike.
Yes.
And because you actually,
and I was left wing anyway, so going on strike seemed a very good thing to be doing.
Right. So you'd studied history at university.
I did, right? Yes, European history.
Right, and you were left wing all the way through university.
My father was a Stalinist shop steward in the print union.
Wow.
Which is one of the reasons the household was always full of flames and violence, because my mother was a Tory. From him, I inculcated a lot of, call it Marxist ideology. And I went on believing that for quite a long time.
How long?
I believed in the class war until I was probably in my early 30s.
Right. Did you read Marx? Did you read that?
Yes.
Right, okay.
I was even a member of a strange political party down here, actually, whose name I can't remember, but they were Marxist-Leninists, they called themselves.
Right. So you properly went. You read. You studied.
I read
all
and
this smart
studied it,
stuff,
yeah, and I knew a lot of Marx. And as I said often in that book I wrote called A Style and Its Origins, Theodor Adorno meant a lot to me for many, many years. But how good a Marxist was Adorno? A very bad Marxist.
Why?
Because he was so bourgeois by origin, but many of them are. But he also had the tastes of a bourgeois.
Right.
So he might be talking about the railway strikes, but then he'd talk about how wonderful Pullman cars were on the Paris Express. So these contradictions kept coming in all the time.
Right.
I can't help liking people like that. I don't want people who've got consistent ideological ideas. I like to see it dissolve.
And so your early plays were left wing. You got the Pyramid Builders
They
on
seem so
strike.
to me.
Yeah, and were they received as left wing?
Yes, I think they were.
People embraced that about your work.
I wouldn't say that. but I mean, the climate was so left-wing anyway, Oliver, that you were just another one of the gang in a sense. And of course, let's be clear where I started. I started at the Royal Court.
Right.
Do I need to say more? I was, I think, the only authentic working class writer who ever crossed that threshold, apart from maybe David Story, I don't know. And what they kept saying to me over and over again, you're working class. I said, yeah. They said, write about it, write about your life. And I said, I don't want to write about it, it's boring. It is so boring. They said, no, we want to know about, you get all this.
I absolutely see.
So I produced a play called Cheek, which was about two adolescent working class kids, louts, you know. They put it on. Bill Gaskell directed it.
Oh wow, we worked with Bill.
We did.
Yeah.
Great worker with actors. Mind less good, but he worked well with actors. And they kept wanting me to go back. I said, that's it, I'm not doing it again. I don't like it. I don't want to see that play as long as I live. It's not what the theatre's about. And I was only about 22. And I thought, that's not what theatre's about. But of course, I knew what the trick was. They were into propaganda. They were post-Brechtian propagandists. There's no getting away from it. So all these plays had these messages. I immediately knew I didn't want to tell any messages.
So,
even with a Marxist kind of worldview that you said you had, you were still able to differentiate art from that and not feel that.
Yes, I was.
Right. Yeah.
I thought art had obligations beyond political sympathies.
Yeah.
The greatest moment in describing this is when I wrote a play called Claw, which is a very good play. It's a 3-act play about a working class pimp, his flirtation with the Tory party grandees, him defying his father, who might have been my father, who was an old Marxist, ending up committing a crime and being wiped out in a secret place by a government body. I thought, oh, well, this will please everybody. Couldn't get them to do it, you know. In the end, Charles Marovitz, a man of total nihilism, did it at the Open Space. And of course, I realised what the trouble they had with it. If you're writing a left-wing play, you're supposed to send the audience out full of confidence in the socialist future. That's the function of theatre to them. But of course, Act 3 showed precisely that he was going to be murdered for that. That's all it led to, was murder. So it didn't fit the bill at all. And that was, let me make the point, that was the play writing itself. It was not me in control of it. And I've always, from that time, I knew plays write themselves. The truth comes through, whatever your intentions are. Even if you were David Hare, something would come through that was not your intention. That's the beauty of theatre. That is the beauty of it. It can't be held down. They don't know that. They run theatres and they are frightened of theatre. It's too big for them. So they say, well, it should serve this purpose. Are you helping people? The Arts Council.
Yep.
Who are you helping? Tick this box. Is it serving the people? Is it serving youth? No, it just happens.
So you're watching these productions of your own plays, and you're sensing that even though this is being put on, it's being celebrated, you're sensing that it's not actually true to what theatre can do.
Is more than that. Mm-hmm. I wanted to get out of that Royal Court milieu with its relentless political. I'm going to keep using this word political correctness. I don't like it. It's political ambitions, and it's still the same, isn't it? It's just moved on. The function of it changes, but the idea is the same.
Pretty much.
And I drifted for a little while into writing satires, little satires, which played in lunchtime theatres. Do they still have lunchtime theatres? I don't think they do. They have little shows. And then I thought, this is ridiculous. And isn't it Terence, the Latin poet, who says, how hard it is not to write satire?
Right, yeah.
I think that's very good. And I thought, yes, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to stop here. So there was only one place to go for him, which was tragedy. And given that I think the theatre is a place for poetry, for an invented language, not the language of the street, though I can do that, not the language of the street, invented language, it can only be tragedy.
And so is this all entirely coming from your feeling, imagination and sensibility, or are you going back, are you reading the Greeks, are you reading Shakespeare?
No. It's self-generated, sui generis. It's all from me, but I don't call myself an intellectual. It's my emotional response. It's reacting. I always react to things. And only afterwards do I think, I know what I did.
Yeah. So it's not even a calculated sense of like, theatre's a bit too socially conscious. We need to...
Yeah, that's the second thought. The first thought is I can't stick being in this room.
Right. Yeah, I just can't stand the smell in this.
Yes, exactly.
In this Royal Court foyer anymore.
The odour is right. It's that when people come out, I had a play on there called The Love of a Good Man, quite a bit later, about burying the dead after the First World War.
Yeah.
And I didn't used to listen, but I happened to be in the foyer, and some people would come out, your usual Royal Court. They'd go, I'm not enjoying it. And the other one said, no, am I? And it said, I mean, I don't know what it's about. What's he saying? Now, this was the interval. It's not the end, the interval. Why would you know at the interval? Anyway, it never happens because I don't do that. But they wanted the comfort of knowing what they were going to be told.
That's the comfort of knowing what they're going to be told, yeah.
So you're
problems, they're not going to have a nightmare.
So you explicitly don't want to comfort the audience?
No.
What do you want to do to them, if
anything?
anything?
I don't want to discomfort them.
Okay.
Because that's childish, in my opinion, and I really don't think I ever did it.
Okay.
There's a lot of violence in my work, but I didn't stick it in order that someone was going, and that wasn't what I wanted. I didn't even want to shock them. I wanted it to be an emotional experience from which they would make meaning, but I wouldn't give them a meaning. So they took the experience away, and they would have to make meaning of it, if they wanted to. But I was not handing out meanings.
So your ideal audience is someone who just receives,
and is sensitive enough to suffer. And above all, I say this to you too, it's the roles. I write roles, and the actors are mesmeric. One of those I could quote would be Ian McDermott, of course. What extraordinary. We worked together a lot. He was so hypnotic on stage that I'm not even sure people were very closely involved with what he was saying, actually. But that was the experience I wanted them to have, which could I say it then, I'm not sure. You can't get off telly, you can't get it off the cinema. It is the living body of that actor, which is hypnotic. And I kept trying to find actors when I had my own company who could do this. And I found them. I did find them. Ian McDermott's a classic, but there are many women I've worked with who could certainly do that.
So you want the audience to... Actually, I found a quotation from one of your essays.
Oh, no.
Which I'm going to read out to you. Because it encapsulates what you're just saying. I'd like you to ask you to expand on it a little bit more, because it's certain things I don't quite understand about it. But you say, let us remind them you must be dazzled by the beauty of the text. It must seize your eye and ear. It must seduce you by its form, its rhythm, its voices, its bodily touch. Only when you are naked may you exclaim, too late, do I share the opinions of this whore? Finally, let us make law of this fact. Great texts can neither be agreed nor disagreed with.
And I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think what I'm trying to say there, and it's rather beautiful, isn't it? I didn't know how well I'd written that. It's theatre lifting you out of the territory of judgment. I don't want people to sit in judgment on my work. It's too... The theatre itself, but I'm talking about myself, it's too complex. It's too emotional for us to start making coherent judgments of whether it works or it doesn't work, whether I believe in it, whether I don't believe in it. It has an authority of its own. I'm talking about authority. Theatre has such authority. The actor on stage, in possession of a great text, the authority is huge. Huge. Mm-hmm. That's why actresses like Victoria, beautiful woman, could go onto that stage with people that far away from her and take her clothes off and say things of extraordinary daring, because she knew that there was an authority in the actor as such, as that particular kind of human being, and you don't address critique at that kind of human being. They're almost godlike. They're not susceptible to the same critical values as the man who's delivering the coal.
So you want the audience to suspend judgment of the characters, of the actors, to suspend that part of the brain that is like judging and making logical connections, let's say. You want them to be overcome by the text.
It's pure seduction.
Yeah, pure sensory overload.
It's seduction, and it can be overload. I don't mind that. It's seduction caused by beauty, and I'm not just talking about the beauty of the actor's body, which often I have enjoyed, but the beauty of the language.
Does that have a purpose beyond itself?
No, except not really. No, that is perfectly good to be getting on with.
Right. Beauty in itself is enough.
Well, there's so little of it about. And it has a beneficial effect on human beings, I believe.
Right.
But listen, I'm not writing fantasies. I don't just sit there and go, oh, this is carrying me away. Stop that.
Yeah.
It's driven by a narrative, which I also like to break up as well as telling it. And it's driven by impulses that I don't entirely understand.
And do you have an idea of where the narrative's
No.
going to go? No. Okay.
Never.
Right.
You never write a plan beforehand.
It's anathema. Anathema to me.
Yeah.
It's self-generated. The characters must have a certain amount of, I've lost the word, self...
Autonomy?
Thank you. The characters must be autonomous. So you think they're going to do that, and then they do that. Now, I'm not illusory. I'm not an illusionist. Of course, they're not entirely autonomous because I've invented them, clearly. But as a writer, when I sense the conventional word is journey, the journey is going there, I always want to disrupt it.
And you can feel that happening.
Yes, I can feel the moment coming when I must break this predictable journey.
Yeah.
And you're doing that because you think that's more true of humans, how humans work.
That would be my justification, since you ask. Yes.
Yeah. So is life itself so kind of complicated to even comprehend that in a way, if we try and put it all in like a neat box, we're not paying service to what life is?
No. That's the poison of ideology.
Okay.
What do you mean by that?
Ideology is where you allow your actions and decisions and your authority over others to be dictated by a series of ideas which probably don't even belong to you.
Yeah.
And your characters are often breaking out of that?
Continually.
Yeah.
You could feel that when we read the castle the other night. I could feel that happening as we were kind of navigating our way through. It was just
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
Good. Well, that's good.
No, it's an explosion of all sorts of stuff, isn't it? An explosion of language and poetry.
And I don't want to call it freedom, because that word is, poor old word, it's dead. But it is freedom. And the audience is, because we live in the sort of society we do, the audience is frightened of that freedom.
Well, this is my
They don't want it. It's
This
too
is
much
my
trouble.
question. Like, how do you deal with an audience who doesn't know what to do with that experience?
You lose that audience.
Just cut them off. Done.
I'm not being contemptuous, but if they've gone, they've gone. Let us just say that some come back.
Do you think that people are less receptive to beauty now? You find audiences are less?
I don't think the English have ever been very good on beauty. Leaving aside, Turner and all that.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a strong suit.
And why is that?
Why are they not?
Yeah.
They're a pragmatic people. And, I come from the heart of them, I kind of love a lot of them. Well, I did. But really, they're quite pragmatic. And, the good thing about the English, especially the English working class as I remember it, they didn't like cant. I'm not talking about the middle class. I don't mean K cant, I mean C cant.
I was like, okay, I'm prepared to go into a discussion of Kant. Let's see how we fare.
Yeah, I was thinking
You know,
the
they're
idea of them rejecting Kant is wonderful, isn't it?
Dear. Cut that bit out.
Yeah.
No, they're very suspicious of it. They kind of recoil from it.
Kant as in
Hypocritical, political or sociological views.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Oh, we mustn't do this, we mustn't, you're doing this. You'd see that look in them. You remember the working class maybe. There's a look comes into their eyes, which is...
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
That is a great English virtue.
Yeah, they would see, because lots of my friends are working class, and I came from like a sort of more cultural middle class, so we don't have much money, whatever. But they just sort of like when I would be talking about any sort of lefty kind of ideas, they could see right.
Yeah, it's and it comes from nowhere. It's just who they are.
Yeah.
But the reverse problem with that is they're not particularly imaginative and they're not particularly romantic. Can't have everything.
But they do. It's like the woman in the podcast yesterday was saying that she had a Marxist professor at university, and she said he said that someone asked him a question saying, if we had communism, what would we do? When we have communism, what would we do with criminals? And he said, well, there wouldn't be any criminals.
That goes back to Thomas More.
Yeah, they'd all get the money. And then she said, she was like, this just immediately was like, that's just obviously stupid. And then she said, and he's from Harvard, and she said she noticed that when he was talking to the cleaner, he was very uncomfortable with himself, and just you could see it's that kind of thing in a way, isn't it? There's this.
Yes, that's the sort of thing you can see. You can identify it very simply.
You can.
And believe me, I'm not saying all Marxists are hypocrites. Some of them really do kind of.
Yeah.
My father did. My father lived life. My father lived that life. Organising strikes, arguing with people.
And he was a Stalinist, he said.
He never saw through it.
No.
Never saw through it.
And he knew about it.
A lovely man, by the way.
Yeah.
Do you think Marx has any insights?
Oh yeah, he probably understands how capitalism operates. He understands that surplus profit is only earned from the work of labourers. Yeah, can't argue with it. You probably can't argue with Darwin or with Freud either. There were all these great 19th century thinkers who may be right. They may be right, but it's not my function as an artist to carry that message to people.
I see. Do you have any function as an artist?
None at all, except to vacate, to empty my own moral, if that's the word, could be, and emotional life into a form which, when presented by these gods, because good actors are gods, then can be transmitted to others. Now, you're going to ask, do I care about the others? Well, no, but that's not my job. We put the play on, don't we? We put it on. Somebody might turn up. That one person might get something from it. Okay, good. But really, the key moment is us playing it. This sounds really bizarre, I know, but when you do a late run, there's the company, me, 2 or 3 people, costume. We sit there and it's a good run. That's heaven. That is heaven, and we're not going to get it again. We may never get that again. And where is it? Where's it gone? I don't know. It's in the ether. I don't know.
When you come to rewriting plays, you don't touch them once you've done them. Okay.
I never rewrite, but I cut.
Do you do edits when you
cuts?
You won't even at all go back on it as you're working. Say you're working through a play over a month. You won't go back and look over it and go, that bit doesn't quite work. And
no,
you won't.
No, I'm very careful to make on the day I write that day on my typewriter that it's as good as I can get it. I think, and the next day I move on. Only when we get into rehearsal and I begin to hear this is going on too long, I will then institute cuts.
Right.
Do you still write on a typewriter?
Yes.
Wow, my dad used to write on one.
Yeah.
And
I love them.
Hacking away upstairs.
I love them.
Yeah, it's a wonderful sound.
I like paper, you see.
And if you're writing a scene on the typewriter and something goes wrong, you just have to literally take the whole thing out and put another one in the start.
Well, there is a stuff called snowpake.
Right.
You may think it's Tipex. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, Tipex.
Well, Tipex, yeah.
You can paint it out and go back. And that's quite good, because the trouble with these things is it's instant, isn't it? You don't like it, it's instant. If you've got to get your snowpake out, wait for it to dry, a certain amount of time passes, which is quite useful.
Yeah.
So you write every morning, every day?
That's been my tradition.
For how long? For how many hours, let's say, in a day?
When I had children to take to school and so on, it was less than it would be when they'd gone. I just thought I could write from 9 to 1.
Wow.
It's quite a long time.
How many scenes or how many pages are you doing in that time?
5.
Oh, okay. And how long might it take to finish a play? Depends how long it is, I guess.
They don't write themselves. I mean, some people have the experience of a play writing itself. I might have been near to it, but not really. And I'm not saying it's graft, but it is craft, and you know, how long does it take me to write a play? Say 3 months.
And so you don't have any... Oh, what was I completely forgot what I was going to ask.
So I'm kind of into the schedule. They do this on podcasts, don't they, when they get everyone's schedules and so on. Where you what kind of supplements people take. So you'll wake up and just go to your desk and work from there? We have breakfast, we go for a walk? Or
That's correct.
Breakfast, then a walk, then to writing?
Yeah.
Coffee?
Oh, quite a lot.
Good.
Yeah, okay.
Excellent.
That I'm normal in that regard.
And you'll just keep going. Will you have like a break in between plays, or will other ideas come up?
I should, work in that 3 hours more or less continuously. And people don't ring me in the morning because they're kind of told not to.
Yeah.
In the afternoon, well, I think I've said this often, I usually paint in the afternoon.
Yeah. But I mean, after you've finished a play, after 3 months or whatever, will you have a gap before you start a new one?
Yes, I'll try to.
Okay. Even if you've got a burning idea?
Yeah, I know.
You'll stop
I don't have burning ideas.
Okay.
Some people say they have ideas in queues. They're queuing up behind them. I don't have that thing. I would write the play. I would have a couple of weeks gardening or something. And I'll start the other one almost from nothing. I will start from nearly nothing. E.g., a woman comes on, another woman comes on, I've just got this, it's all I've got. And she says, why haven't you cut your hair? And she says, widows cut their hair. Cut your hair, because it's set during a war.
So will you know the setting, or that comes to you as well?
It's just a park or something.
Okay.
Could be I don't set plays anywhere now, but often I did.
Right.
So say it's a park. So she has a row. She says, I won't cut my hair. And she said, so you didn't love your husband? He's killed and you don't love him. If you did, you'd cut your... So I just start with that.
Yeah.
Which is nothing. Nothing. And then I add and it develops.
Wonderful.
So it's as though you are letting these characters be autonomous in front of you.
As near as I believe that is possible to one.
How magical! And do people turn up and you're like, oh, someone just appeared?
They just turn up. I mean, that's what happens. That's when you walk on stage, don't you? You just walk on.
Yeah.
In effect, that is what happens.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the truth, though. I prefer vertical movements to horizontal ones. By which I mean, what I think is beautiful in the theatre is descending things and things coming up through traps. When you see an extraordinary thing coming up through a trap, you go, this is the only medium that can do this. It's astonishing.
The people just walking on from the wings, you're like...
that's okay, but...
Fine. Yeah. It'll do.
in a play I wrote called, I think it's Block Echo. No, it's not. It's The Fence in its 1,000th year. At one point, this young man who's in a bit of a state is suddenly surrounded by babies who come down on ropes, on wires. Hundreds of babies. And he's in a forest of babies. I mean, that's pure theatre. You don't do it in other mediums.
Yeah.
Do you have plays that you're particularly proud of? Or particularly fond of?
Fond of, maybe.
Yeah.
You want to know what they are, don't you?
Yes.
For a long time, I've been interested in trying to break up narrative. Because I think narrative is a servitude. We're taking you on a journey, that horrible phrase. My journey. We're taking you on a journey. So they all feel comfortable. Oh, I know where we're going,
Yeah.
So I want to break it. So I will rupture it. And I started doing that in a particular play called Wounds to the Face, in which something looks like it's happening and then it isn't, and something else bursts in. But later on, that's picked up again. So that narrative continually being disjointed. So you can't relax. The audience can't exactly relax. But because I hate boredom, I have an obsession with boredom, and I had it since I was a kid, utter, unbearable. I'd sense boredom creeping in even when it wasn't. And I'd hack away at the boredom by throwing in something unexpected, which even I didn't know what the point of it was. Why has that boy come in sitting on a horse back to front? I did it a few months ago. The horse comes in back to... It's on wheels. Well, I like horses on wheels. It comes back and the kid's sitting on it, facing the horse's arse, And I didn't know why I'd done that.
Yeah.
But within a couple of days, I knew why I'd done it.
Why?
Because he hated his mother. And his mother bought him the horse. Are you with me?
Okay.
So is there...
Well, I didn't know that at the time.
Right. So there is some unconscious in terms of you. There's unconscious work going on.
Huge amount, I think.
Yeah, because Stanislavski's An Actor Prepares, which I really like as a book. Okay, I love it. I think
Get out.
Yeah. I know that I'm sort of in difficult territory with it. But he sort of, the last chapter of that book is about the subconscious, and effectively he seems to be sort of saying if you follow all these rules, you'll release the subconscious of the character. But then the question is, well, the subconscious is far more complicated than us being able to understand it by imposing these Stanislavskian ideas on scenes, objectives, backstories, and actually Morgan is there, so we release Morgan's subconscious, which isn't necessarily related to
quite so. Takes me back to RADA.
Yeah.
But you, okay. So developing from that point, do you have an unconscious, which you think is
an unconscious?
Yeah,
I guess I have.
Are you interested in your characters? Unconscious or subconscious?
Well, no, I'm not, because the unconscious in my characters is continually moving in on the consciousness and taking it over. So I don't really have to be interested in it because it usurps.
Right. So do you broadly...
That's what I mean about instinct, as I'm saying.
Yeah.
Instinct usurps. I see you pinching apples from my front garden, and I say, oh, excuse me, those apples belong to me, and it's all fine, it's all civil. And then I think, I'm going to whack you one. So the instinct suddenly rushes out.
Yeah.
Now that happens all the time.
So would you broadly accept the Freudian model of those different parts of our brain?
Can't answer that.
Okay, fine. Okay, I'm going to... So we've touched on it a little bit already. you were talking before about your early experiences of writing and seeing theatre, and always it comes up this idea of social usefulness, right? And as I was saying to you before, in preparation for this, I've been rereading some of your old essays from the 90s, where you talk a lot about this stuff, and you talk about the triumph of literalism, the triumph of relevance, and all this kind of stuff. And then it's very strange now, you know, I don't go to the theatre that much, I'll admit, but like a little bit, and I see like what you were saying 30, 40 years ago entirely played out. And I find that really interesting, because you're not actually going to the theatre all the time, you're not even watching TV, you're not on the internet. What were you seeing then that allowed you to predict so accurately what we see now?
Well, I was seeing what was happening in my time, as it were,
Right.
of which I wasn't part, or at least didn't wish to be part. And I saw it kind of being endorsed by every kind of political attitude that existed. So when the royal court stopped being about the class war, i.e. when Brecht was retired, as it were, it then became, under Stafford Clark, a kind of feminist theatre. Is he a feminist? I can't speak for him, but it did. And presumably now, because we've moved on 20 years, 30 years and so on, it's fallen victim to another contemporary ideological force, dominant force of its time. And theatre it's not immune to these things. Let's go back to the Middle Ages. What was a medieval theatre about? Well, it was about telling you about Jesus. Frankly, that's all it was about. These miracle plays, it's about the Bible. So they cottoned on to the fact that theatre was a really good vehicle for transmitting ideas from us to you, down to them. And it is quite a good tool for that. It's quite a good tool for giving people lectures. If you don't mind cutting its legs off. No. And its arms.
How far back would you trace that? I mean, you mentioned the Middle Ages. I think in conversation you've said before that there's something about this idea of social usefulness that you sort of trace back to Enlightenment or French Revolution,
to the Enlightenment,
or to the Enlightenment.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, once the Enlightenment had arrived, there was no hope for romantic thought. I'm always interested in the way that Jacques-Louis David, heroic painter of the Revolution, revolutionary gestures, the whole bloody lot, had Hubert Robert locked up. Hubert Robert was a painter of ruins, like Watteau, beautiful country scenes, very bourgeois. But Jacques-Louis David was a pal of Marat and all this lot. He has this poor old artist locked up. There was nothing new that went on in the Russian Revolution that hadn't already been done in 1789, basically.
And you see this as part of the triumph of a kind of
Enlightenment.
Yes.
I mean, the word Enlightenment means you're in the dark.
Yeah.
I will tell you how to get out of the dark, and you listen to me and I'll get you out of the dark.
Yeah, I see.
Stanislavski's not free of this. No, I can give you a quote.
Go on.
I can't quote it now, but I could go and get it. You, the actors, me, the director, we will help them to overcome their barbarous instincts. It's written down. It's his mission. Mission of art. You can't make a mission out of something which is essentially chaotic in itself. You come to see a Barker play, you come to see certain painters, I can't name them for a minute. You leave more confused than when you came in, yeah? That's good.
That's good. Yeah, which is...
There's no function, there's nothing functional going on.
Yeah.
They come to see you act a speech, and when you act a speech, you are so beautiful, literally beautiful actually, resonant with beauty. It's quite nice to take that home.
That's enough. You don't need a function beyond that. Yeah.
It'll do things to you, I think, Oliver. It does things to you, but it's not my business to know what they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go on.
It's great stuff, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
it's
a lot
amazing.
to kind of try and think through.
So you're saying, sorry, just to know that you're saying that there's a strand of thinking which you can trace back to the Enlightenment, or even, well, let's say the
maybe
Enlightenment.
Plato.
Right. Which, and you've had some harsh words for Aristotle, I remember.
I have.
Before. He said he's like just a critic.
Absolutely. Contempt for Aristotle. He never knew Aeschylus. He never knew Sophocles. They've been dead 125 years when he wrote that stuff.
Right.
It's like Michael Billington writing about people. You know, do you know them? Have you spoken to them?
Right.
I'm laying down the theory about what a tragedy is. And people keep quoting it, Oliver. Oh, Aristotle says the unities. Oh, there are no unities in your play. This was 3 centuries ago, 3 centuries BC.
Did he not? Was he not discovering the structures within the story, and then he was just kind of projecting onto it?
He was laying down the law.
Right. Okay.
Because he was frightened of it as well. They're all frightened of it.
Okay, is that fear just the fear of chaos?
Yes.
Right.
Get your Nietzsche out.
Right. Okay.
You know, I mean, probably we're going to come on to this, but you know, The Birth of Tragedy. Read it and read it again. What an incredible mind. I mean.
So this would be your throwaway poetics. It's The Birth of Tragedy that you need.
Yes, because he identified that the Aeschylean and Sophoclean tragedy was essentially about a ritual which was not about rationalising life.
And
But once you get to Euripides, you start to get, you know, it's post-Socratic. Socratic is about making people good, you know? That's all he's interested in, is making people good. And then Euripides comes along, he wants to make people good too. And then you get right through to George Bernard Shaw. Edward Bond and David Hare. They all want to make people good.
There's a sort of patrician element that.
Well, that's an
goes all the way
important
through.
point, Oliver.
Yeah.
It's very kind of de haut en bas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? De haut en bas, from the height to the low.
Right, okay.
I'm on the height, you're down there, and I'm telling you, don't live like that.
Yeah, you're right.
But you think like people like Sophocles, Aeschylus are not doing that. They're not doing.
I don't think they are. Listen, I don't know a lot about Greek tragedy, but and nobody does really. But I think that transaction that goes on in the Greek theatre is not about telling them to behave.
It's more like confronting them with impossibility, with contradiction,
Yes, and
beauty,
pain.
death,
Meaningless
violence.
pain. Meaningless pain. What happens to Oedipus? It's not his bloody fault.
Yeah.
At the same time that Oedipus was written, in Israel, in the Book of Job was being written. Now, the Book of Job is the most extraordinary tragic document. And they had nothing to do with each other. There was no transaction between ancient Greece and the Hebrew states. Book of Job's amazing.
Yeah.
Because God and Satan do a deal. Isn't it sickening? Satan says, oh, you say that man Job loves you. I bet I can tempt him to deny you. And God says, oh, do what you like to him. We're all yours. It's an appalling story. And Job gets punched. His wife is killed. His children get diseases. Yeah. And he still goes, Lord, Lord. Well, you know, in the end he can't take it anymore. It's a wonderful, wonderful story.
Yeah, it's amazing. And we did Prometheus, when we were doing Prometheus, there's interesting kind of comparison between Prometheus and Job.
Okay.
So Prometheus sort of takes on God and then Job sort of accepts it.
Well, maybe these are
And
currents.
also Goethe's Faust as well, talking about the deal between the Mephistopheles and God at the beginning.
Only played Mephistopheles. I played
Faust.
And we did it in St Bart's Church.
Where?
St Bart's in Smithfield in London.
No.
One of the oldest churches in London.
I don't know it.
You don't know. I'm not up on your medieval churches in London. But I was gonna. What was I gonna ask? I was gonna ask about. Okay. Might some people say that Sophoclean, Aeschylean view of the world that's just nihilistic?
Oh yeah.
Don't be so nihilistic, Howard.
Oh yeah.
Are you?
I'm
a
used
nihilist?
to that.
Do you reject the label nihilist?
The word has been made so sordid by misuse. I'm not a nihilist, I think, but a nihilist who was one would probably defend the term very well. If by nihilist you simply mean, oh dear, you don't seem to believe in anything, I'd say no, I'm not a nihilist. I believe in the human impulse, and I believe in certain powerful human attributes which are godlike. And I'm thinking of desire. I write about, you've read them. I write about desire. How it occurs, what it causes people to do, and basically, and I tried this in Gertrude and I think I succeeded, it breaks politics. That's what it does. When Gertrude and Claudius cannot resist each other any longer, they're driven to crime. And immediately the state begins to collapse. This is what Shakespeare's rather worried about. I'm not sure I am worried about it. It undoes things. Marriage is such a crucial sort of element in social stability. But desire, it's nice if it's in marriage, and it is sometimes. But if it's outside marriage, it immediately creates havoc. And it takes you on a bloody word journey again. I can't think of a better word. Voyage?
Quest.
It takes you on a voyage. And people don't have voyages in their lives. They have holidays in... Holidays, where do they go? Gambia? They have holidays. They don't have voyages anywhere.
And a voyage would be something that potentially changes us.
It's between you and me. You know what I mean? You don't have to go to Gambia. You don't have to go on holiday to Monte Carlo to do this. It's the confrontation of two individuals who lead each other to places they never dreamed they could be.
Is there any sort of linear structure to life's narrative, like that you could? Can we see life in any sort of linear?
Well, I'm afraid we're forced to. I mean, dying is the end, isn't it?
Yeah.
I have 2 sons. They have children. I have grandchildren. I'm very fond of them. Of course, these are just... I wouldn't want to be without these things.
But there is a journey in a sense there. It's like you procreate. There is something. There are kind of moments along that, but they never sort of. It doesn't feel like you can completely box them, but that does feel like there is some sort of journey there.
Well, they appear to be natural laws, don't they?
Right. Okay.
I.e., you're a man, you desire a woman. The outcome could well be a child.
Yeah.
Then you've got responsibilities for the child because, I'm not cruel. I don't think you throw children on a heap. You bring them up and all the rest of it. But these are the disciplines you live with. But how many more do you want?
Why are we not cruel then?
Why are we not cruel?
Yeah,
because we are capable of feeling the feelings of others. I think it's called sympathy. Sympathy is a very governing, not a principle, it's a governing feeling.
And is it a selfish governing feeling? Are you thinking, I know that is wrong because if done to me, I don't like it, and there's a sort of social contract of sympathy?
Probably. A bit of a contract. But that's making it legalistic. I mean, it's just a feeling. I read a lot about wars. I'm very interested in wars. And I'm very interested in those moments when you don't kill.
Yeah.
When you take a prisoner very interesting moment.
Or the soldier who walks into a room and decides not to rape the women in there, as opposed to the other soldier who would do that.
Oh, gosh. Have I written that scene?
Possibly.
Probably.
But it is quite fascinating, isn't it? And I suppose
Yes,
why he makes the choice to not do that.
These moments of sympathy, anger, violence, a sense of civility. I'm not against civility. You understand?
Belief in God? Could it be that?
No, I don't want God.
Okay.
But could the soldier, you're saying, could the hypothetical soldier not do it because of a belief in God?
Yeah, because he's right, if I do that.
Oh, well, he might do it for all sorts of reasons.
Right, okay.
He might not like the colour of her hair. I've no idea.
I'm
a great believer in civility. May I be clear?
Yes,
I want to live a civil world.
Yeah.
If somebody tries to break into my house, I want the police to come. I want there to be a police force because I want to write. I don't want to have my typewriter thrown out the window by a lout. So we need all these civil things. This is a key point. Because we have so much of it, we need the theatre to disrupt it.
Ah.
We don't need the theatre to support it along with everything else like the BBC. We don't want any more.
So now we're in a situation where the theatre has essentially become, or potentially become, an extension of the police, or extension of the state, an extension of the surveillance state in some ways.
And critics have always been police.
Yeah.
You know, every time I got a bad review, which was quite familiar to me, it was the critical police putting the boot in. Mm-hmm. We don't want this quite clever young man throwing everything we've done out the door. They spent a lifetime establishing these rules, and then I come along, and others, you know, Stephen Burkham, I don't know who else, who kind of don't buy into that, and they don't want us.
Is that a kind of class war going on?
No, I don't think it's class war. I think it's just a culture issue. Aesthetics.
They have a certain idea of beauty.
If you've been to Cambridge and you've done English, you come out with so many received ideas about your responsibility as an artist and so on, that you don't like people who don't go along with it. And they're the people who run the National, the Royal Court, the Arts Council, BBC Drama.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's I can confirm it's only got worse since when you were watching shows and things like that.
In a way, it could only have got worse.
Well, I did have an acting teacher, rather Jenny, who said that they used to, when they were doing plays in the 60s, at the end of the show, they used to turn to the audience and say, the actors used to say, "And what are you going to do about it?" So it was like literally...
Yeah, one of that, like racism or something.
Racism, sexism,
anything.
some cause they were into, they would
They
used to point at the audience.
I can believe it.
Which is
Fourth wall, nothing.
Yeah, at least they're being kind of transparent about it.
Yeah. Do you think there was a okay? That's an interesting.
So she said that, but she did say like it dissipates it like that. She thinks that wasn't as full on as it was. But do you think there's a steady? Has it just increased, or you know?
Well, I don't go anymore, and I haven't gone for quite a long time.
Right. Okay.
But everything tells me it has, and rumour tells me it has.
Yeah, and what I'm always thinking about is morality is so complex, and like who exactly can tell who to do what, and who knows, and who's ordained with morality, and then you know if you flip that on people, you can say that, but who? I mean, it is a potential recipe for chaos as well if you say that.
Yeah, but the chaos... In a way, I don't care who's running the state. I'm not too bothered about that. It's not my first interest. I'm interested in that box, that room, that cellar in which we can go and we can experience any kind of mayhem we want. Yeah. And it may be good for us. I'm sure that's how the Greeks thought about it. It's quite good for you to see all this. Because when you go out, this is a bit Aristotelian, this, isn't it? You've done it, you've enjoyed it, and you can go back and... out of the field again. Maybe that's in a way what I don't know. Well, I'm asking for that right to that theatre to exist.
100%.
When you jump in the water or jumping off rocks in the summer and you jump into the sea and you swim to the shore, you don't like necessarily. It's amazing, right? You don't really say, "Oh, because when I went through the air, I could feel the air, you know, and I just hit the water, my feet." But you know, it doesn't. It's ineffable or something, you know. And
this is a moment of loss of consciousness. You're saying?
No, I'm just saying. I suppose what I'm saying, if you start to try and explain everything that happens in the human experience and kind of narrativize it and box it, you know, it's impossible, isn't it? And I think probably in a way that people have tried to do that in lots of areas, and we are dealing with the kind of randomness of humans and the contradictory nature of humans and chaos. Although I do find chaos a bit frightening.
So do I.
Yeah.
I'm a very timid person.
Right.
Incredibly timid.
That's why
I'm at home all the time.
Right.
But I've got to think outside my own prejudice. You know what I mean? I have to think beyond that.
That's why when I read Aristotle's Ethics, that's what I actually really liked about it, was that it was very ordering.
But then Nietzsche would say that's fine, but you need the other bit as well, right? You need the two to be in.
Nietzsche would say, I think, that we can't let the weak control the strong. And basically, that's what it's all about. The reason he despises Christ is Christ, on behalf of the weak, persecutes the strong. What does he say? I mean, I think it's a very good argument. A rich man can never enter heaven, but all the poor can. You know, it's a loser's religion, basically. It's a religion for people who have failed. And Nietzsche says this simply destroys the human instinct for doing what you will, seeking power, taking another man's wife. I made that one up, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. But then, if just to kind of play with it, if we just give power to if we don't have that Jesus mechanism, then can the powerful just do what they want, and then isn't it?
Well, I'm God forbid we should get onto political systems.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the beauty of democracy was you could get rid of the boss. But I have a feeling we're past that stage into something quite different now.
But you're saying in your day-to-day life, in personal life, all for order, civility, rules.
There can be no art in chaos.
Yeah, but you want art to take us into these areas.
Yes.
Yeah. But then you wouldn't go as far as Aristotle and say that's cathartic and therefore it's good for us and socially useful.
No,
you'd admit that bit.
No.
Yeah, great.
And I think if you read my plays closely, they don't normally end up in chaos. They kind of start in chaos. That's what the Theatre of Catastrophe is about. There's some poor person wakes up one morning, his house is on fire. Okay, and his wife's been shot. He's got to make decisions. Making decisions is difficult. I hate it.
Yeah.
But he has to do it, and that's where the Theatre of Catastrophe happens, because you make a decision, and of course that decision leads to another decision, and so on.
Yeah, it's a set of decisions, isn't it?
Yeah. Some people would call that a plot. A narrative.
They would.
But they're wrong.
They would. No, I think they'd be right. It's not a bad correlation there. All I'm interested in doing is usurping the predictability of it.
Yeah. We wanted to ask, because we've been doing some teaching and actor training, and I know you've talked in the past. Actually, do you want to ask this about actor training?
Well, you carry on and I'll jump in.
I know you've talked in the past about how you're worried that drama schools aren't training actors in the way sufficient to do your work.
Because this has been my experience.
Why do you think that is? What are they not doing?
Oh my God! It's fear. Fear governs everything. They don't want these kids, these students, to become alienated from society. If you are given a beautiful speech written in incredible poetry, you've got to be trained to do that. And what they're turning out is people who can do TV naturalism and social realism. But to tell you the truth, I can do that. I'm not a bad actor. All sorts of people can do it. I did a community play once, secret. I did. I was amazed at the skill that these housewives and farm labourers, they could act. They pretty well act, So what are they doing when they're training these kids only to do that kind of work and making them rather suspicious of anything that's complex?
Yep.
Oh, well, that you can hear the kids more say, well, I don't speak like that. That's not the real world. So I'd say, well, it's not the real world, but you're in the theatre, you're not in the real world.
And is it as well as that fear around that, is it like they're just not teaching them the actual hard techniques of vocal technique?
I think technique's a lot to do with it. I really can't speak authoritatively here. But I don't think they get enough voice training. You know what they do in Russian drama schools? It's very interesting. You won't know this. The kids spend about a year just watching actors.
Yeah.
They don't do anything. So they get a great actor. Smokhanovsky would be an amazing sight. A great Russian actor would come in and he'd play a role and the kids would go. And then they just copy what he did.
Wow.
And isn't that how Leonardo da Vinci learned to draw? You just copy. You won't know this. 2 Russian directors came over a year ago to Vrada to spend a fortnight.
Right. Was it? Go on.
When they left, Melanie said to them, she said, "What did you think?" And they said, They're not deep, are they? They're not deep.
Savage. They said that about the students.
The students.
Yeah.
Well, presumably the teachers as well. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, they're not wrong.
You don't get any depth out of continually playing the man next door.
Yeah.
Yeah, but reducing everything
To what you know.
to what you know.
To what you know. It's like I get right back to square one here where I started. At the Royal Court, they said to me, write about what you know. I said, I will not write about what I know.
Right, yeah.
There's this thing, I haven't used the word yet, called imagination. Can we let it in?
So if they're going to prepare, if they're what should they be doing then? Classes where they're literally just reading poems out loud and playing with language.
They need to do a hell of a lot of voice training.
Voice training, that
because you could
breath, tongue.
You know,
lips.
there are some actors come into a room. You can do it. I don't know your work, but you can do it. And I know the rest of the school. Nearly all of them can do it. They can take a speech that long and get through it. Get through it, almost by instinct. But it's not instinct entirely. It's training.
Yeah. Just doing
And
it.
every syllable audible, completely audible. And it's no good saying, well, that's not how people are on the bus. No.
Yeah, you're very good at being clear with your speech, and you understand. Your brain seems to see ahead, like the point of a line before you even get to it. You know where the stress is.
It's hard. It's hard to. We found doing readings. It is hard to find actors who can bring it off the page quite quickly.
I agree.
Very hard to find sight
Very
readers.
unusual.
Yeah, and I have seen amazing actors really struggle with readings, and then they'll do like
That's
3
true.
or 4, and by the 5th or 6th reading, they've worked it all out, and the other actors who came in with. I remember doing a reading of Oedipus at RADA, playing Oedipus. It was like the best thing I think I've ever done. It was incredible. It was electric, and then my performance got worse and worse and worse. And I mean, it was an awful descent, and I was getting tenser and tenser. So there is, but I'm quite interested in Stanislavski, and I teach a lot of Meisner technique. Do you know Meisner, the repetition stuff?
I've heard of.
Okay. That's quite.
But you do voice stuff. We'll start our Meisner class with a poem or
we do
a
voice.
speech.
Yeah. I'm fully on board with a lot of this. Like,
I'm talking as a consumer, not as a teacher. I wouldn't dream of teaching students. Wouldn't dream of it. But as a consumer, i.e. a director of plays and a writer of plays, I want these good people to turn up, and they're not turning up. Well, they were not turning up when I was there. And when I saw RADA students doing my work, I thought they were quite at sea.
And is it a lack of sort of emotional understanding of character and movement of a line, or is it
Fear.
Just fear?
It's fear, because
Fear of the
they
text.
don't want the emotion. They're frightened of the emotion.
And is the remedy to train yourself vocally and technically as much as you can?
Yes.
Through repetition, reading classical text.
Yes.
Working on you can literally
Understanding rhythm. You've got to get rhythm. If you haven't got rhythm, you can't go on the stage.
Okay, you need rhythm to go on the stage, and then when you come to text with other actors, just exploring with the language with strength in your commitment to whatever is happening.
Yes, but not at their expense, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
I mean, there's no play on the stage if the actors are not communicating with each other. I mean, I remember, I can't name any of these people, but a famous actress, rang me up from Paris one day where she was playing with a famous actor. And she said, oh God, I wish I'd never taken this role. I think it was Lulu. And I said, what's the trouble? She said, he won't look at me. I said, you can't talk sex to a woman or a man unless you look at them. You can't do it. And that's just one detail, but the whole thing is about communicating things. This is, this is first day at drama school. Sorry, but
No. I mean,
it's true. It's always true.
I think you'd be surprised by how stuff like that is not taught. I mean,
What's this?
just the basics. Like, I mean, maybe I'm being unfair.
I'm saying this to you. I'm not saying it for myself. I'm saying it to you.
We're thinking about this a lot because we've recognised like there's a sort of general problem with culture and drama, and we're sort of the way to kind of solve it. One of the ways I think to solve it is to think about education as well, and us included. I've really trying to read all the classics now, and I didn't read them when I was younger. But yeah, we're trying to work out the remedy and training people up, and even when younger actors come to us and want to kind of go, right, what can we do? I'm keen to sort of think, what could we advise? What would you advise them to do? Like a young actor,
to acquire certain skills.
To acquire the skills, yeah. How would they go about that?
There's 12 volumes of Howard Barker up there.
Yes.
Published by Methuen. Tell them to buy one.
And just read out loud at home.
And sit with their mates. No, not on their own necessarily. With their mates. And the first time they read it, they go... The second time they read it, they'll understand what's being said. The third time, better still. Because it is all there. It's not mad. It's not mad writing.
Yeah, it's sort of... I feel like there's a danger of sometimes it being interpreted, oh, this is crazy and zany and absurd.
Yeah, it's absurd.
It's not
it's not. It is really... Nothing I write's absurd. I thought the absurd school of drama was a sad time. Very sad. But I mean, the war may have caused it. I don't want to be unkind to these people, but they were all so disoriented by the war.
Second World War.
Well, the Second World War, but the work they produced was a kind of slightly mad interpretation of reality, and it hasn't worn well, and it was just funny. There was no humanity in it.
I don't know, so it's drama.
No, there's a lot of them.
But
Ionesco, for example.
Right. So you think, you get these. I mean, this is what we did the other night. We got all these actors to read The Castle out loud together, and a lot of them were younger actors who'd clearly never encountered any text like this before in their lives. But we're all for giving people this experience because it's very, very valuable and can stretch.
It can alter people. I mean, I'm not trying to alter anybody, and I'm not a saint, but some people who encounter that kind of the depth of the text, the depth of the meaning, can be kind of altered by it.
Yeah, and it felt like just fighting as well. It felt like sort of boxing or sort of smashing each other around, training or something. It felt because it required quite a lot from us to read it. Even at night, I was sitting there downstairs, and afterwards I was kind of buzzing. I went into the garden, had a cigarette, and struggled to go to sleep. But that's good.
And that was only the castle.
And that's the only castle. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're trying to kind of get like a culture online of reading plays in the evening because that's quite doable now with all this tech. So it's a good thing to do with it.
So actors should be reading this text, and they should be reading other classical texts, Shakespeare, the Bible.
Oh, of course, certainly the Shakespeare, of course, and any Jacobean you want to mention, worth the trouble.
You like the Jacobeans?
Yeah, because they're writing poetry, aren't they? I wouldn't suggest anything for the 19th century. I wouldn't suggest Harold Pinter, but it's just not my taste. But
you don't like Chekhov either.
Not much, but for reasons that are to do with moral platitudes, really. Right. I rewrote Vanya. They hated me for doing that. I was never forgiven, really, because it's such a sacred text.
So this is a rewriting of Uncle Vanya in which it's about halfway through or earlier than that?
Well, the gun goes off. That's the point.
So Vanya kills
Serebryakov.
Right. And then
that leads to decision upon decision upon decision.
Yes.
Because if I shoot you, something's got to happen, and it does. So.
But then in the play, Chekhov himself comes on stage in order to try and
to make the characters behave, because they all go mad, of course. Yeah. And there's nothing worse than unfulfilled desire, in my opinion. I mean, that's what Vanya is crazy about. What's she called? No.
I don't know Vanya well. That's the only one I don't know.
Her, anyway.
Yeah. The woman.
And he can't get her. He doesn't know how to get her. He thinks of shooting her husband. He got a pistol. He looks at it. He puts it away and doesn't do it. It's all about not doing.
Yeah.
And you think that is sort of
I think that's
sordid?
Death.
Yeah.
It's moral death, if you want to talk about morals. It's not doing things.
Have you ever had any actors try and action your text?
No. Not in the wrestling school show.
Right. Okay.
There have been plenty of others, so I don't know.
Okay. Interesting. That's the idea that you're going to put like a verb on every line.
This is Max Stafford Clark stuff.
So I'm flattering him.
It wouldn't help. Nothing helps my work. Not improvisation. Nothing except going back and reading it and reading it and reading it.
Okay.
Who said that? Calvin. I think Calvin said to a rather nervous priest who was a junior Calvinist, and he was saying, "Sir, I don't get this." And Calvin said, "Just keep saying it." And he said, well, I'm not sure that'll help. He said, yes, say it and say it and say it again. And the next time you say it, you'll believe it. I do think it is that simple.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Do you have any advice for writers? Are you interested in other writers?
I feel sorry for them. No, in this climate.
Yeah.
In this climate. In this place where everything is fear, there's a dread of the imagination. So when you go to write something, I imagine they go to write something, they go, better not do that.
Oh, absolutely.
Better not do it, it won't get on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, all the time.
You get it on sets, on film sets, they take words out. You can't make that joke.
It's death. It's living death.
It's really bad.
But
And who do they think they are?
I know.
Yeah.
Some people are just terrified though. I had one on a set when they took out, there was a reference of someone in the media who'd done something not even that bad that week, and they just changed him to someone else in the media, and everyone was just terrified on set of mentioning at Middleton, the essayist guy, because he'd been accused of misbehaviour, so they just changed it to Bear Grylls. And I remember just being like, don't really matter. No one here is saying like we all love Ant Middleton. His name is it was just even that bad. But I think people are just terrified of like their survival.
We don't even realise.
Well, that is why we're living in, it appears to me, a Stalinist era.
Yeah, we are.
You don't speak. The next thing will be you'll start giving people away. We're not quite there yet.
What do you mean by giving? Oh, telling on people. Oh, we're there.
Are we?
We're totally there.
Oh, we're there.
Well, I know that books are being destroyed, but I mean, reporting your neighbour.
We're there.
Are we?
I would say we're there. I mean, maybe I'm being a little bit alarmist. Would you agree?
Yeah, we're there.
Yeah.
Cancel culture is reporting on.
Yeah, it's essentially reporting.
Well, it is, but I wasn't thinking of that.
Yeah, but you're right. You're going publicly reporting on, and sometimes people have done horrible things, whatever. I'm not, but yeah, 100% it's. But is that going to get worse?
Before it gets better, I suppose, historically speaking.
Get better.
Yeah, what historically speaking, how do these periods end? Historically, you're steeped in history. Huge upheaval.
I think there has to be
Breakdown.
I think there has to be breakdown before there can be reconstruction.
Yeah. Some sort of war.
Oddly, by an irony, a man lives next door to me. He's just moved in. I don't know him really. He's an Arts Council officer. I spent 50 years fighting the Arts Council, and I never doubted that the Arts Council was necessary. Who else would pay for these shows? Because the Earl of Essex, he's not around anymore. They've got to do it. But these officers, they substitute themselves for the people in exactly the way the Bolshevik Party substituted itself for the working class. You think this, you think that. No, I'm telling you what to think. So they go, oh, well, the theatre should be about helping the poor. Okay, off they go. They're the criterion. Well, you filled the boxes in, haven't you?
Yeah. I've done many of those forms. Never successfully in my life.
That's terrible.
And it's like 100-page form. I mean,
Is it as much as that?
Yeah. It's absurd. You have to say what you want. There's literally a question: what do you want the audience to take away from the show?
The answer is I don't know.
How can I possibly
I don't know.
How would you know? And how are you to know what they need anyway? You know,
Also, the other question on page 86, when you've done a show, what legacy do you leave? I thought I'd say, well, half the audience started fucking the other half, which they didn't do before.
That would be the ideal.
You know what I mean? How would you know? If the work's good, you won't know. If the work's bad, well, you might know. We attacked the police station.
But yeah, we were like when we overturned the local police station. We had our copy of the play in our hand that we'd seen 2 months earlier.
Yes,
pretty much. I mean, it's actually not an exaggeration like that. That in 2020 and those few years after that, there were literally plays trying to inspire some kind of reaction.
Yes, and this is in a way what Brecht was after, wasn't he? He wanted to send the audience out full of fervour for change, as it's called.
But his go on.
I mean, I just always I suppose but we all do want some type of society. That's a society that they want, or these people want, and they're trying to make it happen. Then if you don't like that, are you just going to have to play the game back to get the world you want? Yeah,
that's interesting. That has been spoken about in certain circles, hasn't it? It's like, well, you don't like the sort of left wing art, like you've got to do the opposite back and take back
take
control.
take control. Institutions take control. You've got to do. So is it just a power battle basically? Either you've got like the.
Well, it's not my job. None of that's my job.
None of this is your job specifically, I suppose.
Whose job is it?
Let them say whose job it is.
But you wouldn't want to have any part of that.
No.
Right.
If there was a revolution tomorrow of some sort, I wouldn't know. Who knows what it would be? And somebody said, "Oh, Howard, you were a great writer. Would you like to run the Arts Council?" I'd say, "No, of course I wouldn't. I don't want to be contaminated with these functions." In that sense, I think of art as a religious, somewhat. I mean, I'm getting old, as a slightly religious practice.
In what way?
It's not dependent on the opinion of the public. It has its own internal authority. But I see very bad things ahead in terms of, talking about visual art. I wouldn't be surprised that a lot of the visual art is removed.
Right, it's being sort of people sticking themselves to it,
nailing it, smashing the hammer.
Well, it may not be that bad. It may just say that all these paintings by I can't remember his name, but these 16th century paint with women with big tits. We can't have them, and so they'll end up in the cellar. So then no one will see them, which is in a way destroying them.
How can people read your work? What should they read? What should they buy? Well,
I'm very proud of the 12 volumes. It's a nice number, 12. They offered me a 13th, but I thought that doesn't sound very good. I'm happy with 12. It covers everything good I wrote up till about, 2019. So what I wrote subsequently, it's all at my agents. These plays exist and I continue to add to it. But, I haven't the faintest expectation they'll be done.
I mean, I would very much like to see them done. Because I've read quite a few of the.
Oh, I know about yes.
The ones post 2019, and I mean, in my opinion, you're still writing work as fresh as anything, and even more daring. I
think in one of the plays, as a kind of dedication, I just wrote for the few. It is for the few. I can't escape that. People who say to me, Howard, in 50 years' time, you're going to be the number one writer. I go, it's not going to happen.
And I would really recommend your book, Arguments for Theatre.
Yes, and also may I mention A Style and Its Origins.
Right. That is...
It's partly biography. It's very small. It's a very small part biography, part history of the wrestling school.
Right.
And therefore it says a lot about theatre.
I'd love to read that. Wonderful. Well, Howard, thank you. It was incredibly stimulating. We touched on the Enlightenment, Nietzsche, Stanislavski, Shakespeare, everyone. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Oliver.
Thank you.